anything you want it to be.
All right, this is regular board meeting, Augsburg Region Port Authority for Thursday, November 7th, 2019. It is 4 p.m. I call the meeting to order. Mr. Davis?
For letters and communication to the board, there's nothing requiring action, but a couple of really good articles and press releases in there. First and foremost, as of November 4th, 2019, Hertz is operational at Ogdensburg International Airport. You can get there from here, and it's so much easier for passengers now that there's a name brand in there as well. Numbers seem to be pretty impressive on that. They've doubled the number of cars from when they've started there, and we'll wait and see how that goes. There's an also neat article there from an aviation blog, airlinegeeks.com, that talks about revisiting Ogdensburg International Airport 1 year later. Interestingly enough, the assessment is it's better connected by jet service, and there's more passengers. So it's good to see some outside positive validation as well.
Good. Anyone have any questions? No? Move on to approval of board minutes, October 8th, 2019. Mr. Adriano, did you get an opportunity to review those?
I did not, because I was not here at the last board meeting,
Okay.
so I was unable to know if they were accurate or not.
Mr. Coffin reviewed them as the Assistant Secretary.
I've just reviewed them and signed them. I believe they're accurate as they're presented.
No changes are required then?
Correct.
Your motion to accept as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Presentations and reports, please.
The first up was the Finance Committee meeting that met during the period. We reviewed finances. Chris, did you have anything to add there?
Well, I would note that we reviewed the financial statement. It has a couple of the kind of typical interesting points where timing issues on things like port activity and grant payments and things like that resulted in some changes or deviations from budget. But I think that all of those are perfectly reasonable and acceptable. And you know, if you had any questions about that, I'm sure that Wade and Joe could explain any questions that exist about that. I note, I was thinking about the finances of the port, and I note that Joe has started, but this is good news, but he's still getting familiarized with the authority and with its procedures and routines. And it is November 7th, and the budget has to be adopted by the end of next month. And I rather anticipate that we will be presented with a budget at our next meeting and ask for action. It will not happen that there will be the kind of collaboration and discussion between the board and the staff that would be ideal in preparation of a budget. I would anticipate that the budget that we'll get will be last year's budget with some tweaks based on factual changes that Wade or the members of the staff will know about. This is up, that's down. But that essentially it's not going to be a hell of a great planning document. It's not going to be the moment where we've really thought through and reprioritized, you know, touched base with our souls and where the future is going for this authority. And it is a goal at some point, whether it's next year, that this budget planning process become deeply collaborative and a moment to take stock and rethink through things every 12 months.
A multi-year, like we've discussed.
That's right,
Yes.
and we've talked about this before, and I understand why this is not going to happen this year. I am frustrated that it wasn't going to happen last year, and it wasn't going to happen the year before. So, Joe, we've got to get our wheels on the ground and get stabilized and do the best we can. In terms of this year's budget, I have a couple of thoughts about direction that I would like to see, and I am quite prepared to work within what is possible, Wade and Joe, and for you. You know, if you came to me next month and you say, we weren't able to do, but the things that I would be interested in, for instance, I'd like to have the revenue projections be your best estimates, as we have said about the port projections. You don't know until the
Contract is signed.
That's right. But use the best projections, but identify where we have volatile assumptions in place. And I think port traffic is clearly one of those. And what options we will be able to consider if the assumptions don't materialize.
I would also, and I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt your
That's fine.
train of thought there. At the finance meeting, I'd also like to have OMLC here in the room, so that way we can go into executive session, talk about specific clients. And so you have a real good understanding of what those opportunities and risks are.
Well, I think it would be excellent. You know, I don't wish for any of us, in fact, to second guess the staff. But I think that sometimes we really have to understand and be able to support. And when we don't understand, we're in danger of being negligent. And I don't want to be negligent. I'm not up for that. I am.
None of us are.
You know, I feel ill-prepared to play the role as chairman of the finance committee. I have a history degree. And so, I feel ill-prepared, but I want to do what we can to be informed and to be a participant in the process within the very real restrictions that the authorities' activities and revenue present, because I think that we, in some ways, have got to say to ourselves, we haven't got enough money to do what we ought to be doing. And as we made a decision with the, what's that term, compliance officer?
Yes.
We decided we didn't have the money to do that. And I think maybe in some of the financial planning, we can't do what would be neat and spiffy. We better understand where we're out on the limb.
Everything can be important.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I'd like to have the staff flag the categories that our judgment calls and talk about our options. And I'd like to know what the projected budget will do to working capital. Because I think that it's important for us not to have year after year after year where our working capital is diminished. And there are a couple of things that I've heard other board members say that they were concerned about it. And if you could do it, I would say, can you lay out a plan to do maintenance on the border station? To be prepared for unexpected expenses on the border station. And I wonder whether the other members of the board, without notice, have any direction that you could give the staff about spending the next 30 days productively on the budget?
It's actually a much shorter time frame than that, because we'll have the goal is to have the first draft to you a couple days prior to the finance committee meeting on the 21st. Be able to make any changes after discussion with the finance committee, and then bring it to the full board for the 5th.
You know, I wonder, considering there's 4.5 of us, I don't know when you're gonna be available, Joe.
Sure.
But because we're not full board, if that shouldn't go to everyone. And
That's the
have an
intent,
opportunity
yes.
to look at it, and then, they could make a call to you, or any one of us that will be here for the finance on the 21st, or even come, as far as that matters.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Joe and Megan, if you our game to come when the budget presented.
Good.
That would be,
What is-
this is the time when
When is it?
The 21st.
is it 3 PM, I believe?
Yes. I can make that.
That would be great.
Good, good. I mean, the more we all see and provide input, I think it's better, makes it easier for you and the committee to come up with, plans on where we should be looking, or where the staff should be looking for, the next fiscal year.
Mhm. That's what I have to present, and if that's acceptable, then I'm done.
Good.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Chris? Anything? Dave?
Nope, I'm good. I agree with what he said, having been here for the finance committee meeting.
Right, I thought that went
Yep.
fairly well. I think Joe understands what we're looking for.
I'd like to just quickly ask Wade, would you tell me a little bit about how you feel about having access to files and being able to print reports and things of that nature? Are you feeling as if this is a good thing?
It's been great, because prior to the early part of last month, I didn't have direct access to it. Now, I can't change anything in there, nor should I have access to do that, but I have the ability to see things, and that makes a difference for everything from when a vendor calls up and says, when am I gonna get paid? I can log in there and look and see what the invoice is, when it's been logged, you know, who approved it, all that other good stuff. Right down to the fact that it helps with the payables runs, knowing which vendors, which are the oldest. We've been cleaning some things up, bringing that down, as you'll see. Again, there's still an issue. Cash flow is stubborn here, and it always has been, and it will be for a while longer. But having the access to the reports and being able to have intelligent conversations with my colleagues here has been wonderful. Now, in addition, all the stuff that you see every month is also going out to all the managers now.
Good.
So they're seeing the payables runs, they're seeing the receivables, they're seeing all the detail. They're seeing it at the same time everybody else is, so it's not just this is finances information and that's it. I mean, there's been some excellent conversations about, well, for example, Stephanie, what's my budget code, blah, 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 what does this mean? And there's been organizational learning that's been going on as a result, so.
That's good.
It's been really, really good job in that regard. My hats are off to Joe and Faria for helping to facilitate that.
Great.
But the reporting has been key to the whole thing, the report access.
And we should mention, I think one of the significant things about the business at the finance committee meeting was that this form in which we've been getting our financial return or reports for the past year or 18 months, this requires the folks in the finance department to take reports that the computer system generates and then key the entries into this document. And what Joe and Wade are proposing is that in the future we'll get reports that will have a different format. And they won't have quite the same cluster of columns, but they'll be generated by the software system that we're using for finance. And I think every time I've learned a new or used a new report form or computer program, I've said, well, why isn't this column over here, and why don't we have the column that shows the difference between the two columns? And there are lots of things that would be, I would have done it better than the guy who designed the system. But if you can take the reports right out of the system, they will all balance when they come out. They will all be accurate. There will not be any fumbles on keying, and we won't have invested, whether it's a day or a week, transferring information manually that isn't producing anything for the authority except communications.
Absolutely. And that's the difference between 40 seconds to run and print the report from the system versus 40 hours of manual input from the accounting department.
So we say 40 hours
Oh, yeah,
minimum
well,
a
that
month?
lets us, you know, sit down and do the homework of what's in the underlying information, which is where we need to spend our time, because, you know, we can't generate some more revenue, we without question need to figure out how to do things more cost effectively.
Mhm.
Just for example, when I came from Florida, from a company in South Florida, when I got there, we were picking and choosing who to pay. But over time, you know, we just found more cost-effective methodologies to do things, you know, but cheaper vendors, you know, yeah, we like to shop in-house, but, you know, what does that do to us from a revenue standpoint, from a cost standpoint? Hey, we gotta find cheaper ways to do things. And then eventually, we were running regular payroll runs when I left, which for me, that's the light years of progress when you're picking and choosing, and then you're running regular, and everybody's getting paid on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the things we could certainly have to dive into, is to find more cost-effective ways to do things.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Anything else, Chris?
No.
Anybody else? Megan? You glad you're not on the finance committee, is that what you said?
Every day.
Thought I heard that.
That was just a sigh.
Thank you, Chris. You're doing a great job there. That's why you're there. Reports, income and expense report.
On the report side of things, not too much to add from what was already said and mentioned here, and both at the finance committee. A couple things I will point out. Payables decreased by $414,000 over the course of the month. The effect of August, in August we over-recognized expenses, so we recognized a lot more expenses than we needed to in the port project, and as a result, August looked a lot worse than it actually was, and now September, the reversing effect is in September, and you can see that with the professional fees contracts line that shows up on both the consolidated income statement and also the port reports. So, big picture, fiscal year to date, round numbers, 4.2 million in the door, 3.03 million out the door, for an operating profit of $1.1 million, round numbers, on a year-to-date basis.
Any questions on the income expense report? No? Move on to bridge traffic report.
Bridge traffic report, due to the timing of the month, I do not yet have the, you know how I like to put that in context versus the other crossings, I don't yet have that report. However, the bridge traffic report, I don't have the BTOA report, but our bridge traffic report is showing 6% increase in auto crossings and a 5.86% decrease in truck crossings. And you can see the corresponding revenue number there in the chart as well, and the impact of the total increase. So we're still seeing weakness in the trucks primarily due to the exchange rate. And when last we looked at the comparative data, it was down across all crossings as well.
Is there, has anybody, and I don't know who would do that, has anybody figured out why we're seeing that decrease and in what sector of the economy, the United States and Canada, why that's happening?
Let me look at some Canadian export reports. I might be able to come up with some information for you on that.
It'll be interesting to see if it's, anything that we might be able to take advantage of. It's not happening because of whatever, either the exchange rate or any kind of tariff discussion or something else. If it's Canadian firms are concerned because of tariffs or something, maybe they'd be more apt to look on a way to come across the border.
I'll see if I can't get a hold of Ontario Truckers Association data. It's usually a couple months old, but it might have some useful information.
Yeah, because
on
we've
those
been
ones.
down pretty much for 2019, but our fiscal year is down 6.63%.
Yes, and I'm seeing some crossings down by 8, 12, 14%.
Yeah. So there's something out there. And a lot of times, even though there's a negative, sometimes you can turn it into positive, so. I think the more information we have, maybe we can react to it, if you
Sure.
can.
I'll see what I can find.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions on the bridge traffic report? If not, the airport activity report?
The airport activity report, as you can see on the screen, the passengers in versus passenger out. Again, we're seeing just a slight imbalance there. We're approaching the 150,000 passenger mark. And specifically on the third chart in the slides, you can see the yellow is SkyWest, and the red is, excuse me, the red represents Allegiant in terms of passenger numbers. That load factor on that right-handmost bar that you're looking at is up to 54% load factor with SkyWest, and that's after the significant schedule change that occurred basically 2 months prior.
We're way down in September just because of the lack of Allegiant flights, or?
Well, the lack of Allegiant flights was one, and then we had that schedule change with SkyWest that just didn't go over too well.
So if you look at it comparatively, and you look at the, if you look at chart number 3 in the deck there, look at the blue bars, where the blue bars stand alone. As you go across, that is when there's no Allegiant in there, and you can see, for example, where we were in the various months over 3 different years' time. Even in the off months, we've more than doubled passengers versus the previous EAS carrier. So we're doing quite well in that regard.
And Stephanie, it went okay today out to the airport with the arrival of our first significant snowfall?
Yes, it did.
The crew does a good job. I was out there over the weekend, and everyone is right where it's supposed to be, and everything went smooth. The flight in, we went out, it went very well.
Things are moving very smoothly right now.
Yeah. I didn't come up to you, you were busy working, so I didn't want to interrupt you. I was watching you, just.
Sounds more ominous than I think it was.
No, it went very well.
You got videotape.
Everybody's
Oh, I am.
doing a good job. Yeah, you can say you are, yeah. Yeah. They do, even bringing the plane in, now versus like a year ago, they do such a better job, and, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yes, all teams are working pretty well together.
Good. Good to hear. Anyone have any questions?
Just a quick one, Stephanie, what's our backup plan? I was asking you about the plow.
Okay, well, we have a large plow that, with a broom attachment, and that's our main source. The piece of equipment that is down is a smaller dump truck with a plow and the sander on it. We do have a backup sander that we can use. And worst case scenario, I sneak down here in the middle of the night and take Steve's truck.
I don't have it.
I take the other plow.
Okay, so we got a plan at least.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
What are we looking at for the, you've got as the 2002 International is in need of major repair. What are we looking at, any idea?
Just getting the quote today. I don't know if they haven't faxed it to me, but they had it in the shop looking at it, but it was for the oil cooler. The problem being, we would have tried it, but it's so rusted and everything when you take things off. I imagine there's gonna be a list of parts that'll have to be replaced around that with them. That's the way we looked at it, because, you know, I don't know, the thing wasn't rusted, so it's so old. We could have tried it, but we just thought we'll make a mess of it. So it's at 11, they brought it in Tuesday, and then she was supposed to get a final quote on it, but, you know, once it's in there, and basically we're at their mercy with that, because we're not gonna pull it out and I'm giving it away, but I'm just saying we'll probably have to deal with whatever the quote is, but we can tweak it if we have to.
I just wonder if we had an idea of what we're looking at with the words major repair.
That's a relative term.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 2002. Anything else, any other questions for Stephanie?
Thank you.
No?
Just one final quick comment on there. It's good to see the new team out there really coming together. It's, you know, really good to see all the different parties working together and running a really good airport out there.
Yeah. I certainly have. Board activity report?
Steve, do you have anything to add?
No, just mostly salt activity, kind of after the salt deliveries, everything's been kind of what we normally expect. A lot of activity with fall fill-ups, and then having the early snow, that'll move some salt out, so we should see some activity there with that. And we're probably, yeah, we're more than halfway through the Chilean salt that we planned off.
Right.
You know, that pile is halfway done, so I expect that'll be done probably by mid-December, and then we'll get into the blue salt from Windsor that's on the end of the dock.
What do we have this year compared to last year in salt?
A little bit less, not much. It's
And we
pretty,
ran out last year,
right. Well, yeah, all of this will be done.
and the farmer's almanac says it's gonna be snowier this year.
Yeah. But if you look across the way, I think that might have something to do with it. Well, and then you look, the other company didn't get any of the contracts. So
So what do they have over there, 1,000,000 tons?
650?
Oh, 650, I thought they had more.
Well, they got more. There was another ship on the week today. They're gonna have a good year.
Yeah,
Either way, bring it on, because we'll get bridge traffic. So,
Right?
yeah, that's true. But I'd rather have it at our port.
Yes.
True. Yeah, no.
None of that comes over here, though, right? Unless you run out.
Yeah, that would be their call. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not serving this.
No,
Yeah.
unless they run
No,
out.
it's
Yeah,
not.
unless they run out, the
Unless-
salt company makes a
They have a
decision.
contract for Ottawa this way, so.
Yeah, but last year they ran out here, right, and then they had to service here.
they had to cover their 25% more with some, I think it was more going up into the Adirondacks. They were, it was the end of February, March, they were hauling up there.
Right. I wish they'd be here more. Anything else?
No.
Steve?
Good, thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Steve regarding the board? Before we move into marketing, John, Wade, if you would, I believe we had quite a wind and rainstorm last week, and we had an issue regarding at least one of our buildings in the industrial park. How did that go?
Well, I think if he unzips his vest there, you'll see a Superman logo down there. Because Steve was literally everywhere that day. Steve, do you wanna,
Yeah,
he really, I mean, you've seen it, he rose
yeah,
above and beyond the
the
challenge.
day started with, well, I had the crew come in at 5, and basically, based on what's happened before, we just didn't want anything to happen, so we just instantly moved everything to one lane, escorted traffic. I'm sure some of you have been behind a paving thing where they follow the truck. Well, that's what we do. We just keep the speeds down, and that won't affect them for, you don't have to worry about oncoming traffic or anything. You just keeping the public safe. It may cost them 20 minutes or a half hour, but they can get across. And then everybody knows we're open. Well, as soon as I got in here at 5:30 and we got a gust of 59 miles an hour, which, since I've been here, that's, you know, they say that you're gonna get that, but we've never really got them on the bridge. Everything's been in the high 40s or low 50s. And then TI called me and said they're restricting traffic to trucks. And when they do that, then everybody scrambles, and we'll pick up more trucks, but also we'll pick up those people that are unloaded, so we get a higher increase. So that's kind of why we do that. So that was pretty straightforward, although, you know, hectic, but that was fine, and that was going along pretty well. And then 7 o'clock, I'm trying to talk with everyone, the power goes out here, everybody knows Ogdensburg was out till 11 or later, certain areas with that. So we scrambled around, and it affected us right here. We had a tractor with it works up the PTO, but it powered the building. But then we lost our communications there, so.
You're using a truck to run?
A tractor.
Tractor.
Oh,
Tractor,
it's-
yeah,
Tractor PTO.
tractor PTO, and it's got a generator on the back, so you hook it in
So
there.
you were hooking up this entire building?
Yes.
Yes.
You don't wanna know how it's.
That is
Right.
I'm just really impressed.
Well,
Points for
Otherwise,
creativity.
otherwise would have had the morning off, but.
John was like,
yeah,
really
the
good.
tractor was working fine,
The
so.
employees would have liked a little less creativity, but that's
And we got the radio up and running, because that was always an issue with them, so. Then it went pretty steady, and we kept everybody informed, Wade. And then just one thing I want to mention, that this is the first time St. Lawrence County, and the gentleman's from Ogdensburg, I can't think, Matt Denner, he called me, which was a first with the communication, and we were in communication, so he was able to say what we were doing, and that, I think that lowered a lot of normal issues that we might have. People at least know what's going on. So I called and thanked him afterwards, but he gave me a lot of back and forth, but we'd never gotten that kind of thing during an emergency, whether it was, usually it's wind or sleet or ice storms or something like that, but that was a real help. So going in about 12:30, we had a call from the tenant over there. He said he can see sunlight coming through the roof.
What building was that?
Building 11, it's Connexus. And the fascia had come loose, and 10 feet of the roof deck had come back, and when it did, it's an adhered roof to insulation, and then air got in there and peeled the rubber off the insulation. It's adhered, so you had this, it was like a bounce house up there. We thought, well, we'll get our guys up there and try to hold it down and work it back, and we had to get off of there, because if it had cut loose, it'd take everything with it. So we called RSI, they came, and the guys, when they saw it, they said they'd never seen an adhered roof kind of delaminate like that in the wind. So they put in over 150 screws with washers and brought it all back. I don't know if anybody, there's some photos out there. And then they got to the seam and used this ice and water shield over the edge. So it's dried in, but it probably would be tough to take another windstorm. So that they're protected in there for now. We check them every day with that. And then we're working with the insurance company to get an adjuster in there. But we do have a proposal that's a little under $100,000 to replace. What they will come and do is they'll leave the insulation, put a cover board over, mechanically fasten that through to the roof deck, and then put glue and re-glue new membrane on there with that. So that's their proposal. So you save at least the roof deck where the insulation would go. So I wasn't sure what it would do, but everything kind of calmed down about 3 or 3:30, and we were happy for that. And then they had that done by 5, dried in. So, and then we had some issues down at the port with some of the tarps ripping, but nothing major there. So that's kind of ties in. If anybody had questions on that building, that's an ongoing thing with Joan weighed on the insurance.
Don't forget about all your normal crises that were going on that
Yeah.
day as well. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
very impressive.
And you made the coffee at 7, that was even more impressive.
Well, that's really
Well, I
good.
got here
was
at 7,
expecting
the
it,
coffee's
yeah.
made to go, oh, it's awesome.
He was here since 5, so.
I was gonna say, that was his third thought. That's the only answer to why
Yeah.
I can get this one done.
Our hats off to Steve and his
Yeah,
crew.
thank
Yeah,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
thank you.
Sounds like a
Nice job.
wonderful job.
And your crew, please.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, definitely, those guys.
Yeah, they make you look good.
Yes, they do.
I'm sure
Takes
it's
a
not
lot.
easy either.
Just don't let Stephanie know about it.
Well, she's stealing his truck.
I know, she'll
Take
take
that one.
Yeah.
That's right, she's still in personnel, but she's taking his truck.
All right, any questions or comments for Steve? No, let's move on to building occupancy report.
Yeah, that's largely unchanged, still 87% in the industrial park, this building's full, port's around 29%. And airport, I believe it's reported.
There's been no change for the airport.
We still have 2 hangars available?
3.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3.
Mhm.
Is that up? Didn't we have 2 last month?
No, it's been a couple of months.
We've had 3.
We've had 3. We will get used out of them this winter when folks come in for a day or 2 or 3.
Okay. Good. Any questions? Anyone have for John? No?
None.
Okay. Any unfinished business?
There's none.
Moves on to business items.
So moving right on to business items, agenda A1 is acceptance of a New York State DOT grant agreement. Let me back up and explain. When FAA issues a grant, it's 95% FAA, 2.5% New York State DOT, 2.5% OBPA. What New York State Department of Transportation does, they collapse everything that they have down into one grant that has 3 parts. What you're seeing here is the DOT portion, or the 2.5%, as it pertains to 3 projects. The EA for the drainage and terminal